So when it comes to flex, it's a very general term. What I find where you can look at swing speed. I think that's a very common number to look at.
The starting point, right?
Yeah. So, let's just use generalization here. If someone's swinging a driver at 95 miles an hour, you're typically probably looking at a stiff flex category.
Yep.
But you're also looking at the player's miss. You're looking at their tempo of the swing, how they're loading it. If you get someone that's they got a quick transition, you might need something that's a little bit more stable at that tip section, right? And again, there's the swing speed, but then there's the tempo, how you're delivering it, what's your miss. So I think there's a couple more elements there than just saying, oh, you swing this fast, okay, this is what you need.
Yeah. No,
I mean, if I get someone like borderline, those are things that you start looking at. And you're also looking at, where's the player at? Are you dealing with a junior golfer? Are we going to get faster? Are we older? Are we going to maybe slow down? So you're trying to forecast some longevity with that club too.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's, like I said, for me, I'm always club head speed is the first thing I look at, right? Okay, how fast are you swinging it, whether it's driver, irons, and that kind of puts us in a general category, right? Okay, if you're swinging, 7 iron at, 75 miles an hour, okay, I'm going to start you off with a regular flex, but yeah, maybe, we need to go a little bit heavier regular flex and kind of look at that. Or if they start getting to the point where they are borderline, right, do we go a little bit lighter, a little bit heavier based on that? And then, yeah, obviously, like you said, with how they load the shaft, with their tempo, all those things are going to kind of factor into
the color of it.
That too. Well, what's your favorite color, right? You can definitely go that route.
I've had a Michigan fan, he can't do red, so it doesn't make sense.
Thanks. I mean, again, because there's a lot of different options out there that, there could be two shafts that are two completely different companies, but give you the same results. And again, maybe one feels a little bit different, but yeah, I mean, flex, that's the kind of starting point, right? For me, that's always the most important. Hey, let's get flex first, kind of get you in that kind of general area, and then kind of, fine tune within there.
Yeah, and I would say, weight of the shaft would be the other thing, and that's when you start. I mean, do you see guys where you're swinging 120 and you're getting, a 50-gram shaft? Typically not. You're usually going heavier. Walls are thicker. You need more stability there too. Feel is a big thing you talk about with shafts too. So I think it depends on the customer if they can give me that kind of feedback. Again, that goes back to how detailed we can go with the shaft. So I've had shafts where I'll swing it and it feels like rebar. Even though it's it's a 6 stiff, and then I grab another one and it feels definitely a lot softer. So I think that's when you start talking that bend profile, you start talking the torque. So torque basically is the twisting of the shaft at the tip section. The higher the torque, generally you're going to see it feel softer. It's going to want to turn more, usually slower swings.
It's also tough too, because there's no industry standards when it comes to even measuring these shafts, right? One company might consider something stiff, another one might call it regular, kind of borderlines. There's no one way to measure shaft stiffness, so they're all doing it different ways. So that's where you really get into kind of just having to test them out and what feels right to that player.
Yeah, I think stiffness is, like you said, it's not, there's not a universal measurement, but that's why we do a lot of testing too.
Yeah.
In our studios, we're hitting things. We want to know what kind of feedback we're seeing, so that just helps when we're fitting something too.
Just because they're a heavy driver setup, does that mean they're going to need a heavy iron shaft, right? Not always, right? I mean, you swing driver very differently than you swing irons. You're interacting with the turf. You're getting different feedback there. So I would say that, yeah, generally with flex, unless maybe you have some borderline, but if you're regular flex and irons, most likely, more often than not, right, your regular flex in the driver. But I would say that for what I've seen, yeah, it's not always a correlation to, hey, someone gets a heavy, stiff driver shaft, they need heavy, stiff irons. Maybe they like a little bit lighter with their irons, or vice versa, right? I've noticed that it's definitely not always hey, driver shaft to fairway woods to, all can be exactly the same as far as, on the spectrum at least, right? It's hey, heavy versus light, so.
Yeah, I would say, it's a different swing, right? If you're hitting an iron versus a driver, you're swinging up versus swinging down. Generally, they correlate, but I've had guys where they'll need some low launching iron shafts, but it's head combination with shaft. So I might have some, super high launching iron head, then we're trying to counteract it a little bit with shaft, and then we get to driver and it's kind of a completely different scenario. I would say I don't see that a ton, but
not a lot.
You see it. So to say it's 100% correlation between all of them, I wouldn't say that.
I'd say there's general guidelines that we follow, right? Like you're looking at like irons versus wedges, right? Generally, when you go to wedges, you don't want lighter than what's in your irons. You maybe go a little bit softer, but a little bit heavier so you can get a little more kind of feel or control around the greens, but not so stiff where you can't feel like you can, get those touch shots that you're looking for, right? Yeah, if you don't want to go too light, if someone's playing, a 130 gram, iron shaft, you don't want to put them in a, 90 gram wedge shaft. It just generally doesn't make sense, right? So yeah, we obviously follow those guidelines, right? But it's the same thing with like when you go driver to fairwoods to hybrids, right? Generally, say for example, if you're 60 gram in the driver, we're generally going 10 grams into the fairwoods heavier versus, and then down to the hybrids. Those are just kind of some general guidelines that we follow, right? But there's never any hard and set fast rules when it comes to shafts.
Well, the other thing too that I was just thinking about is shafts. When you talk weight, a lot of people think whatever the number is the weight of the shaft.
True.
So there's unique ones, but typically
I could say 60, but it's actually 69 grams.
Yeah, if you're playing like an X, usually it's going to be heavier. It might be closer to 70 grams. One that comes to mind, a Nippon Modus Stiff. It says 120 on it. It's 114 grams. So that can be deceiving too. Yep. And that's why we're here, is to kind of
guide,
look at all that. Yeah, look at all that kind of stuff, because it's what you read doesn't mean exactly that's what it says, right? Or what it is. So
it's also, it can be very player dependent, right? Certain players like certain feels. So say their swing speed would put them in a stiff shaft, but they like a lot lighter feel. They want to feel where the club head is. They might want to go into something maybe regular flex. Mm-hmm. Maybe you play around the weight a little bit, or the opposite. They're in a stiff shaft, but they like something heavy. They like something stiff for control. Then you might need to bump up, go light X.
Well, let's throw this out there. Let's say we get a player that comes in that they can't give you that feel. They're like, I don't know. Is there something that we look at? I think on my side of things, if I get a response of like, they all feel the same, you're relying on the numbers a little bit more and kind of the launch condition. You got to kind of forego some of these elements of how they're delivering the golf club and the shots maybe that they're trying to hit. We can get a higher handicap player that's just more data driven or static fit driven.
You look at dispersion, right? Obviously, I think shaft can have a good impact on left to right, right? Get their time in that club face up. So, if they can't really give the feedback on like, hey, this feels too light or too heavy, or I don't know which one feels better. It's like, okay, you look at the numbers a little more, right? It's minor details when it comes to comparing them generally, right? It's not like, hey, you're hitting this one 20 yards further, but it's like, hey, this one spins a little bit less, or a little bit tighter dispersion, other kind of things you can go to.
Yeah.